All right, we're live with Kevin Reese here on Airgun Hunting Legion videocast. Kevin, you are responsible for getting me into the outdoor industry. And I can't thank you enough all those years ago for giving me the confidence to actually charge people for blogs, which was 10 years ago. So thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on and doing this.
Glad you're still with me, man.
I haven't dropped off yet.
And I'm gonna open up my can, so it's gonna be loud.
All right, go for it. Hey, I've got sparkling water. What do you got?
Rockstar.
It's so your background is pretty slick. You running for office? I mean, what's
no? I'm already in it.
You're already in it. Okay, great.
Yes. I take out the trash when Trump's not in there.
Okay, gotcha. So you're on the maintenance staff?
Yes, I'm a janitor.
Okay, perfect.
And hog hunter.
And a hog hunter, which is
I do both.
Which is what we're talking about today. So for those of you that are new to Airgun Hunting Legion and the videocast, one of the things we're going to be doing is the Heavy Hog Club. And you can get your patch for killing a hog and submitting it to one of the leaderboards in the sub 100 pound, 1 to 200 pound, 2 to 300 and 400 plus pound range. And Kevin is one of the foremost experts, especially in the state of Texas, on killing hogs, and works for a great thermal company in Pulsar. So, which is why we have him on today, talk all things hog hunting. So, Kevin, let's talk pigs here. When you think about pig hunting, well, first off, how long have you been killing pigs for in Texas?
I don't know. I've been hunting them for over 20 years, and I've been killing them pretty consistently for the last, 15, 17 years, something like that.
Right.
And I'm still an avid bow hunter, so, it's hard for me to say that. I used to say 99% of the animals I've killed have been with a bow, but working for Pulsar and running guns with thermal and night vision devices and stacking up pigs that way, I don't think I could say that anymore, but I still do both, and I couldn't tell you how many pigs I've killed. I know Todd Huey is another friend of mine. He's an avid hog hunter out here in Texas, and he texted me a while back, and he was up over 7,000. I know he's keeping track. Over 7,000, right? He texted me when he was over 6,000 too. Todd Huey is a bacon making son of a gun, man, and he's got some great videos. So if anybody's interested, they need to check out Lone Star Boars. Check out Todd Huey.
We'll like that.
I consider myself a pretty good hog hunter. And I appreciate the what you call me out as. I've lived and breathed hog hunting for quite a while. But I don't count. I don't know how many hogs I've killed. Honestly, I just don't know how many hogs I've killed. But I know Todd Huey keeps track, and he's killed over 7,000 I know of. And so I don't know that I've killed that many. I can promise you. I think he's probably number one.
What's your biggest hog? That's what everyone wants to know, right? What's your biggest one?
But we do it all year long. I hunt them with bows and air rifles and ARs and everything, whether it's, 20 degrees outside or 108 degrees outside. We still get after it all year long. Mm-hmm. And right now we're getting into prime time because a lot of the farmers around here are starting to cut their corn. We're getting into the harvest time, and it's probably another week or two. It's gonna be mayhem out in the crop fields out here.
Do you know off the top of your head how much damage Texas alone incurs?
My understanding in the research that I've done is in Texas alone, I think the last number I saw as far as say crop damage was around 54 million a year. So over 50 million a year. But as far as total damage, and we're talking property damage, livestock, crops, we're talking all of it. We're talking damage to the environment. We're talking about habitat for other indigenous species out here. We're talking over $400 million a year in total damage annually.
Do they come into residential? Have they ever come into residential areas and terrorize people?
Yeah, I mean, there's some of that. I mean, especially if you're in a place where some rural areas are nearby. I know um, even when I was living in Navarro County down in Corsicana, we had problems with pigs tearing up the golf course down there. And I was talking to, in fact, I was talking to Brian Quaka, Pigman,
Yeah.
years ago, and I can't remember where we were talking. We were just talking hog hunting, and he was and he knew that I live 45 minutes up the road from him, so we were talking about Corsicana, and he was actually getting ready to go up there and literally hunt on our golf course.
Really?
So I think if you live in places that are close to rural environments, or even if your neighborhoods butt up to some areas that I call um, hoggy areas, then you probably are going to see some hogs come through your yards and terrorize your pets. And I think there's a woman down in the Houston area that, earlier this year, I think, that was killed by, I don't know if it was by a boar or a sounder. I can't remember, but the important thing to remember is that there is an inherent danger when you're hunting hogs. It's not necessarily like a prevalent thing. I don't think you have to go out there and worry about getting hurt, but you just have to have some common sense when you go out there and you're hunting hogs. Most people know me. I know a lot of guys will go out there and chase them with dogs and grab by the back legs and everything else. And me, I touch pigs when they're dead.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to touch a live one. But have you ever had a scenario where you had one charge you, or had any real Western scenarios with a hog?
Yeah, it's funny because I just wrote an article about that for Hog Hunting Magazine. I think the last issue is on the shelf. It's a special issue that's put out by Outdoor Sportsman Group and North American Whitetail. And I wrote about the myths of hog hunting, right? And like we just talked about, there's an inherent danger, but people like to emphasize that. And I can't tell you how many shows I've seen on TV where they talk about they're dangerous, lock up your kids and stay away and let the professionals do it. Of course, those are guys that are getting paid to go out there and extricate hogs, trap them, kill them, whatever they're going to do. So of course they're out there trying to make a buck. My position has always been hog hunting is year round. It's awesome. It's a great way to make sure that you're ready for fall hunting. It's also a great way to introduce your kids and your spouse to hunting, right? So yeah, there's an inherent danger, but it's 99% of the time when people say they're being charged, man, they're not being charged. They're in the way of a hog trying to get out of there.
Mm.
Right? That's what it is. Somebody takes a shot, they hit a hog, or they don't. The hogs scatter, and one or two happen to run the direction that they're in, running to their position. They think, "Oh, I'm being charged," but they're not. I can promise you, I've been charged a couple times. One trying to get on a four-wheeler with me. That was pretty exciting. And he was literally running to cut me off, and got up on his back legs, and I was off the side of my four-wheeler, off the other side of the gas tank in the seat, and I was trying to kick him with my foot to keep him away.
Oh no.
Another time I was bow hunting, and it was a good shot. It was a mortal shot, but I didn't wait long enough.
Mm.
I thought that I was shooting. Most of my bow hunting is at nighttime. In fact, most of my hunting now, especially with thermal and night vision, whether I'm running air guns or ARs, 99% of my hunting is still at nighttime, right?
Mm.
And so I depend on other things like illumination. In the bow hunting, I use illuminated nocks. And I use that example because this is the example. I mean, I was bow hunting when I was charged by this about a 200-pound boar. And I made a shot. I knew it was a good shot. And I was using illuminated nocks, right? And so I shot the boar, and it ran about, I'd say 20 yards. And I did have a pass through that I knew of. And so my illuminated knock stopped about 20 yards from where I had shot him. And so he's about 40 yards away, but it's pitch black outside. But I knew that I could see the light and knock stop. So I thought, oh, he's down right there, right? So I get out of my stand and I walk over, and I was with a friend of mine. It was also a guy's guide and a friend, but fortunately he kept the 1911 in his Chippewa boot. And so we walked over there, and man, I looked him, I walked over to lighted knock, and it was just the arrow laying in the dirt. And I thought, oh, I got to pass through somehow. I mean, he ran with the arrow, but here's the arrow in the dirt, right? And so I thought, well, let me just walk around for a minute and look for some blood, and then we'll go back to the stand and we'll wait. But then when we come back out, we'll know where to start blood tracking, right? I was only interested in just finding first blood and then going back to the stand. Man, I didn't walk 10 yards from where that arrow was laying looking for first blood when I heard a rustle, and I lit him up with the light, and that boar stood up and squared off on me and started just staring me down and popping its jaws at me. And I could see his side was bulging. So what happened is I had shot the arrow went, it wasn't a complete pass through, but the broadhead was out the other side of him.
Right.
And what happened is when he ran away, the broadhead snagged on a branch or something and pulled it back and opened him up on the side, and pulled the arrow out. And that's why the arrow was laying in the dirt with the knock on, right? And with no pig attached to it.
Right.
But then I could see when he was standing up, squared off and popping his jaws at me, and his side was ripped open. I could see, his side bulging. And he just put his head down and just started coming at me at 30 miles an hour. And he was only probably 20 yards from me tops when he stood up and started charging me. So he was in a danger zone with me within seconds.
Right.
And my buddy I would stand there like an idiot with a bow, just like, I've got nowhere to go. He's got me. Like, there's nothing I could climb up. And I mean, I'm a chunky guy anyway. I'm not getting out of the way. Fortunately, my buddy pulled out his 1911 and put, I can't remember, 4 or 5 rounds in him. And he stopped maybe 3 feet from me. So yeah, he was fixing to stomp a mud hole in me. And he was about a 200-pound boar. He had some decent cutters on him, but I mean, they do get bigger. But man, I mean, look, like I said, I can't tell you how many pigs I've killed. I can't tell you how many pigs I've killed with a bow. I can't tell you how many times, how many hours, how many nights I've spent out in the woods, literally from dusk to sunrise. And I have maybe 2 experiences, maybe 3 tops, out of all the years and I've been hunting, and all the pigs that I've killed and all the pigs I've seen. I've had other close circumstances, but most of the time I think if you just stop, like I have in other occasions where I've come up on hogs and they come out and I don't like them, they don't like me, and we just stare at each other. I don't move. I just wait to see what that hog is going to do. And every single time that I've done that, man, they stop moaning and barking at me, and then they just walk away, and I go my own way. So it's never been an issue. They're not as dangerous as everybody thinks they are, but
if you get caught,
it's there.
Trouble. Yeah.
You have to be ready.
There was one time I was in South Texas a couple of years ago on a deer hunt, and going into my blind in the morning, there was 2 deer on two hogs out in front of the blind, and I didn't have any type of nighttime illumination, but I had no idea what to do. I wasn't sure if they were going to come and tear me up or not, so I jumped into the feed pen where the deer would be going, just to wait until they had moved off. I mean, they were right in front of my blind, like 4 feet. And I was, I'm from the north, so I'd never actually seen one. That was actually the first one I ever saw in person in the light of my headlamp. But the funny thing is, like, I was less than 15 yards from them, and they didn't even look up when I shined light in their face. That was the weird part. But speaking of the night hunting, what are some of your tips for hunting hogs at night? Like, what do people need to know? What do they need to get? And what are general hunting tips that you give when people want to strap up for the after dark hunt?
I don't want to plug all the energy drinks and all that stuff, like the Rockstar shameless plug. But but the truth is, you got to have energy, dude. I mean, seriously, your body has an internal clock, and it's used to going to sleep at nighttime and being awake during the daytime. And that's something I battled when I worked. I spent years working in a factory, and 4.5 years on night shift, and you never quite get used to that, right? And so hunting at night is the same way. It's real easy to go and sit down, especially bow hunting or still hunting, rifle, air rifle, whatever, and get real comfortable and fall asleep. Well, you can't do that for multiple reasons, especially if you're in a tree stand. So, but a lot of times when we're hunting, we're thermal hunting on crop fields, we're just riding around in trucks and we're scanning one field after another, one field after another, and we may see them 1,000 yards out. We've got 1,000-yard stock that we've got to put on before we, put any pigs on the ground. But man, it just takes energy. So I'm not saying go out and buy energy drinks, because then I have to deal with all the people telling me that, I'm going to get, kidney stones or whatever, that this stuff is bad for you. But I'm just telling you, man, you gotta, I don't care if it's coffee or soda or energy drinks. I mean, you've got to be energized and be ready for a long night. A lot of times when we go out, we're going out like right after sunset. Mm-hmm. It just is getting dark, and man, a lot of times we don't come back until 4 o'clock in the morning.
And then you got to go to the office.
And there's been times I've come back at 7 or 8 in the morning.
Right.
And it's hard to do. It's hard to stay focused, but it's incredibly important, because especially with today's air rifles, right? Speaking to air gun hunting and big bore air rifles that you're using to take these animals down. I mean, forget the hogs, man. There's an inherent danger just with people walking around with loaded air guns or rifles, or shooting bows. I mean, when people get tired, they start, their decision making is not the best. You really got to stay on point. That's my first tip, right? Is just be ready for the hunt and understand that you've got to be energized and focused from minute 1 to the last minute of the hunt. The other thing is I would use colored lighting. I know that you said that, you lit them up with white light and they didn't move, but man, 99% of the time when you light them up with white light, they're going to blow out. So I've killed a lot of pigs with red lights and green lights. And when I say red and green, I'm not talking about filtered. I'm talking about clear lenses with high intensity red or green LED lights. So tactical style flashlights. And when I bow hunt, that's what I put on the front of my bow. If I rifle hunt, if I'm not using thermal or night vision, then I'll use a red or green, say, tactical flashlight, maybe with a remote pressure switch, back on the handguard or the forearm. And I would do the same thing with air rifles. Use a bright, red or green colored light. That would be the next tip. Another tip that I would tell you is when you light them up, hogs do see some color. I wrote about that in that myth hog hunting, that myth article for Hog Hunting magazine. But hogs do see some color, so don't fool yourself and think that they're just seeing black and white, or like deer, they're just seeing some some blue, or they can see UV. Hogs see, I would say, almost on par with humans. In fact, I'll even go a step further and dispel the myth that hogs can't see, because I hear that all the time too. Hogs can see. I would say, again, probably on par with how you or I see. And they may see you a couple hundred yards out. They don't know what you are, but they know you're there. So if you're, say, within 100 yards and you're stalking, I mean, you really need to be in stalk mode, right? You're not just going to walk up on them unless they're busy and focused on other things. You're not going to walk up on a boar or a sounder that has pigs out there paying attention to what's happening around them. Gotcha. They see you coming, but they see color. So you don't want to blow them out with white. You want to use red or green, but when you light them up, you want to lower that light down on top of them slowly. I would say if you could learn to shoot just using the outer glow of that illumination that you're throwing at them, then you should never blow any hogs out. But I mean, I've been in situations before where I've used red lights or green lights, and I think that everything's kosher, and then I'll bring it down on them nice and slow, and they don't blow out. But then once I hit them with that solid beam where I give them all that throw, now they're blowing out, right? And it's not necessarily the illumination. They definitely can see the light source, but the other thing you've got to determine is, especially if you're hunting from an elevated position, is what's happening on the other side of them. Because sometimes it's not the light that spooks them, it's the shadow on the other side. When they move and they see that shadow move, they're gone.
So what is easier and more natural for hogs? I mean, is it easier to hunt them at night because they go nocturnal? Is that why you hunt mostly at night for them? Or is there, a real big difference? I mean, outside of the just daylight versus nighttime in their behavior that you choose to hunt mostly at night?
Yeah, just like a lot of wild animals, man. I mean, they're most active at nighttime.
Okay.
It's like predators. And so the best time to go after hogs or predators is when they're most active. I mean, that's just nighttime. It's the way it is. Now, that's not to say they don't move. And my wife looked over one day and she saw a coyote and she said, "Well, that's weird. There's a coyote out here in the daytime." And I said, "Well, that's not weird. I see coyotes in the daytime all the time. They're just more active at night." I kill pigs in the daytime, and sometimes they're active, sometimes they're not. 99% of the time, they're not very active in the daytime. They're laid up. They're bedded down, especially when it's warmer, right? Because hogs don't sweat, and they've got to figure out other ways to control their body temperature. That's why they go into wallows, and that's why they, cover themselves with Cerakote to try to mitigate that, but also for some bug control, right? That's why they'll stay there all day, and then when you have the big temperature drop in the evening, that's why pigs are up and they're most active, because they've been laid up all day. They haven't eaten anything. They haven't drank any water. And I tell people, people get really spun up about hunting it in the summertime, right? Because just a couple of days ago, it was 108 degrees here. Nobody wants to hunt that. Nobody wants to hunt when it's 108 degrees. But I'll go hunt when it's 108 degrees, and guess what? I'll kill more hogs, and I'll kill hogs earlier than than when it's cooler outside. And why is that? Well, because it's 108 degrees, and they've been bedded up, and once once the sun goes down and you had a big temperature drop of like say 10 or 15 degrees, then those hogs are up and on their feet. When it's already cool outside, whether it's spring or winter or something like that, they aren't necessarily laid up all day. They haven't been fighting to keep their body temperatures down. They're not dying of thirst out there while they're bedded down. They're not anxious to get up. So when it's cool outside, I mean, you may see pigs at 9 o'clock, but you also may not see them till 3 o'clock in the morning. Where summertime, man, they always say you can't pattern pigs, right? And there's some truth to that, especially if you're hunting over a feeder or a food plot or whatever. Hogs do what they want when they want. And so if you got to come in a string at like say 2 days in a row, and the third day you better be out there ready to kill them, right? Because they're going to change up on you. But it is easier to forecast what they're going to do when you're dealing with extreme heat during the daytime and then that temperature drop.
So what is a pig's biggest weakness?
But you're going to hunt them at night, man. I mean, that's just the way it is. It baffles me that look, we have 39 states and we have feral hogs reported in 39 states and 4 Canadian provinces.
Right.
Maybe more than 39 states now. We have upwards of like 6 million feral pigs across the U.S. And and we still have states out there that won't let people hunt at nighttime. I'm like, man, use us in Texas as an example of what your state's going to become if you don't actively fight your feral hog population, because they reproduce at a crazy rate. I mean, feral pigs can reproduce up to twice a year, right? They have a 115-day gestation period, maybe about 90 days of nursing and all that, and they're back in the reproductive cycle, and they're birthing at least 4 to 8, probably on average 6 to 8 in a litter, with maybe about on average a 1-to-1 boar to sow ratio, right? So you do the math, and that's not something that is just happening in Texas. It's happening in all these other states. So the states that are blocking people from hunting at nighttime, I think, are doing a real disservice to their indigenous wildlife, to the farmers, to the ranchers, to hunters, to the people who use who eat the meat, and frankly to the ecosystem at large, because these are not indigenous wildlife. I mean, this is an invasive species. Just like nutrients, some other ones out there, I mean, they have to be dealt with, right? So when you literally cut hunters, ability to hunt these animals off at the knees by saying you can't hunt them when they're most active, it's just crazy to me.
What is wild pig's biggest weakness in your experience?
Say that again, you cut off.
So what is a wild pig's biggest weakness?
Its biggest weakness?
Yeah.
I would say, well, it's definitely not its nose, right? I mean, they can smell a grub 12 inches underground, and they say scientists have suggested that they can smell human scent 7 miles away on the wind.
Jeepers.
But I would have to say there are a couple things. Their eyesight is not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. Definitely not on par with other predators that are out there.
Right.
They also have a really hard time looking up, right? So just by the way that their bodies are built, and the mass that they carry around their necks and at the top of their necks, they have a hard time lifting their heads up. So now if you're up in a tree stand or something like that, they can see you from further away. But I mean, if they're down there by your feet, they're not going to look all the way up the tree and see you sitting up in a tree.
Right.
It's a little bit of a weakness. They're loud eaters. That's probably another weakness. And they travel in packs, right, that we call sounders. So now lone mature boars, unless they're breeding, they're going to be off on their own. But young boars and sows and piglets, they're all going to be in sounders. And man, when you get a sounder coming in and feeding in an area, I mean, man, they make all kinds of noise. And the more noise they make, the more it covers up any noise you're going to make, whether you're sitting up there trying to get ready for a shot or you're stocking up on them.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest sounder you've ever seen?
I was, there are two instances I can recall. Once, when I was a factory manager, right about the time that I started, as an outdoor writer, and I was still working full time in a factory, and hogs would come into a milo field behind us quite a bit. And I walked out there one day and I stopped counting at 75. There were 75 pigs out in the field there. But I couldn't do anything. I was working, right? I literally walked out the back door of the factory and I stocked up. I got within 20 yards of them, but that was just for fun. And then I went back to work. I was hunting with North Texas Outfitters. I can't remember. It was right around the Red River. Was out with the owner of North Texas Outfitters, Dakota Stower. Great guy. If you ever decide you want to come out, he's somebody I would recommend.
Well, actually,
but I was up there with a good friend of mine, Jerry Besky, who's an editor with Outdoor Life magazine, and we came up on a was it Jerry Besky? I'm trying to think. No, it was Jerry Besky. So we went out and we got on a sounder of over 100 pigs.
Right.
And it was funny because we weren't sure what they were going to do. They were about 500 yards off, and they started coming down this rise and coming straight for us. And we thought, well, we were going to stalk them, and then we realized that they were migrating towards us. We thought, well, we'll just hold up right here. And man, we had 100 pigs within 40 yards of us.
That's
they literally migrated from 500 yards down to 40 yards from us, and then we just opened up on them.
It's gonna be slightly.
And we were running thermal rifle scopes, so it was pretty sweet. It's like Call of Duty with pigs.
Well, I guess that'd be one way to sell hunting to the younger generation, right?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like a video game, but at the same time, you have to be serious what you're doing. I mean, we're killing animals and we're putting meat on the table. Mm-hmm. So, there's a reality to it, but hunting with night vision and thermals is a different experience.
What was the name of that outfitter you hunted with?
That was with North Texas Outfitters, Dakota Stowers. I hunted with him with Sporting Classics, and I went up there. I just killed when I was up there with Sporting Classics, I killed a 308-pound boar with about 4-inch cutters.
Oh shoot.
But I also hunt quite a bit close by in an area called Waxahachie. And I spent a lot of time with the guys at Three Crow Outfitters. I think they run hunts on 80,000 acres.
Okay.
And I do a lot of stuff with them. In fact, I'll probably hunt with them this next week. I've got a 350 Legend I'm running for Hog Hunting Magazine. And so hopefully we're going to go make a big stack out there now that they're starting to cut the corn out there.
I would love to meet those guys, because one of the things we're going to do for Airgun Hunting Legion is have an outfitter directory, free directory for people that contact if they want to hunt with air rifles, if they're friendly to taking guys out with those implements. So it sounds like they have a tendency to get people on pigs. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I'll qualify with the way that I have been hunting lately. With air rifle hunting, and that is that I still hunt quite a bit with air rifles too. I still love hunting with my Benjamin Rogue 357. I've got Dragon Claw 50 cal that shoots obviously 50 caliber, and I have a hard time calling them pellets because they're literally bullets. Like I shoot Nosler bullets,
those are
right?
slugs.
And they shoot bolts. They shoot arrows.
Yeah.
Like upwards of 500 feet per second. I mean, these air guns are insane. But I also shoot Air Force air guns. I shoot. What else do I shoot? I shoot a Benjamin Marauder, I think 25 cal. So there are all these really cool, say PCP air guns that are, they're getting really jaw-dropping numbers when you look at kinetic energy and momentum, right? And they're repeating arms too. So, I mean, some of them I have to cycle with a bolt, but I mean, I've got a couple air rifles at home. They're basically semi-auto, and I can load a magazine. I know the Sig Sauer MCX, I think 22 cal. But people have a lot of different options. And so even with a bolt gun, running a bolt on a PCP air rifle, generally I can get 2 or 3 pigs down. Especially when you're talking about the velocity you're getting out of these pellets, you're talking about 1,000 feet per second, or 900 to 1,100 feet per second out of these big bore air rifles and larger calibers, 357, 45, 46 cal, 50 cal.
What would you recommend?
25 cals will do a number on them.
What do you recommend if someone wants to get their gear ready for hogs? What do you recommend from a caliber perspective? Out of a big bore air rifle?
My 3 favorite air rifle calibers for hogs are going to be the 357, the 45, and the 50 calibers. I like the larger calibers. I like the systems that I've run over the years. I mean, I've run a lot of different air rifles. My favorites are still, I love the Benjamin Rogue. I love the Dragon Claw. I love the Air Force air guns, Texan. And I'll tell you another one that I didn't mention that is one of my new favorites that I just started playing with is the Umrex hammer. Right? I mean, that thing's an animal, man.
50 cal. And that's gone through Cape Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, well, I wrote about this also years ago for NRA blog, and I wrote about it for I think Ground Outdoors, and I've written several articles on hunting with air rifles and how air rifles, a lot of people don't realize it, are the real guns that won the West, right? You look at the Girandoni 46 caliber air rifle. I mean, Lewis and Clark carried that on their expedition way back in 1803. And you have 13 volumes that make the Lewis and Clark journals, and you have 39 mentions of an air rifle that they used on that expedition, 39 mentions, And what they would do is when they encounter tribes, they would go and they would do a show of firepower, right? And they would demonstrate how they could shoot 20 rounds accurately in less than 30 seconds from this Girandoni 46 caliber air rifle, and not use any powder, no smoke, and I could direct you to the article. If anybody ever reads this and wants to know where they can read that article, I'll share that information with you. But
Yeah, we'll put the link in here.
time and time again, when the natives would see this show of firepower from the Lewis and Clark expedition, they would be in awe and let the expedition pass. Right? I mean, they literally used that air rifle to safely make passage from point A to point B and literally chart the Northwest. They did it with an air rifle. He also took it, I believe, if I remember correctly, he also trusted air rifle in a firefight. And they also hunted with this air rifle. They were taking big game with this air rifle, right? So, man, if they were developing an air rifle that was capable of taking big game in 1803, or even earlier, back in the late 1700s, and why can't we trust air rifles that are built today, these big bore air rifles, to hunt with in 2020? And it's funny the amount of pushback I got publishing those articles from people that automatically assume that you're talking about a 17 caliber pellet rifle. No, man, I'm talking about air rifles that give you more momentum and more kinetic energy than a handgun.
Didn't you, and this just goes to show how much we've hung out at POMA conferences over the years, didn't you write that, not just write that as an article for one of the magazines, but didn't you write it for a final exam a couple of years ago?
Man, the first time I wrote it, well, see, you're right, because I'll tell you when it was. The first time I wrote, and I don't remember what year it was, but the first time I wrote that article, I wrote an article of that kind. I wrote it for the NRA blog, and I knew a lot of people were interested in it because 5 months after it had published, it was still in the top 10 most read on the NRA blog. Right, it was still in the top 10 articles. That's not a pat on the back for me, man. I mean, that's the interest that people have in air rifles, right? I mean, it's still in the top. This is an article about air rifles that was in the top 10 on the NRA blog, right? That's about the subject, not about the writer. And then I wrote another article that is still out there for Grandview, and I can't remember. You probably have seen both, but I mean, you've been around long enough that the one that you're remembering specifically was the one I wrote for Lars Dale's site at the NRA blog.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it was a good article. The one I wrote for Grandview is even better because I include a bunch of statements that are straight out of Lewis and Clark Journal.
Did they kill an elk? Did they kill an elk, or is it just deer that they were killing? You know?
I only know about, I've had people speculate that they were elk hunting, but I know they were hunting deer with it.
Okay.
And I know that they carried it into combat. And I also know that their reasoning for taking the air rifle was specifically to demonstrate a show of firepower, of superior weaponry, right? To demonstrate that they could shoot rapidly. I mean, they did a demonstration with that air rifle to civilians before they ever left for their expedition, right? But they only had one. And the idea was that they're going to be able to go out there and demonstrate these shoots without using powder. The thing that was going to blow their minds was repeatable, accurate shooting and not using any powder, right? Those were the big things that they were putting all their, I guess, their hopes and dreams in, right? And able to gain passage past these tribes. They were hoping to show that they were shooting accurately and not using powder. And they were hoping that the natives would think, well, gosh, they have one, there's 20 more in the keel vessel in the river.
Right.
Right. And so they didn't want any part of that. But the truth is they only had the one.
Lewis and Clark, a group of guys that traveled the country in 1803 with an air rifle and lost their compass like in the first couple of days.
Yeah.
You just don't get guys like that anymore.
And the funny thing is they use something similar to a bicycle pump to fill the reservoir in the stock of this Girandoni air rifle, right? And I think the reservoir held somewhere around 800 foot-pounds of air, right? But you know how many repetitions it took for somebody to fill that reservoir one time?
I'm guessing a couple thousand.
Somewhere around 1,500 repetitions, right? So some poor sap underneath Lewis and Clark's um, um, leadership, under their authority, had to. He would look at him and say, "Hey, I need you to go fill the air reservoir in this Girandoni." And I can't imagine, like, I literally might just like walk off and start walking back east.
It's like
I'm going to do a bicycle pump 1,500 times.
being at camp and being like, all right, you've got water duty, you've got cooking duty. Jerry, you're on air gun duty.
Yeah, like, I quit. I ain't doing it.
I'm just gonna give myself up to the natives right now.
But they did. I mean, for people who are air gun enthusiasts, I mean, really, if they haven't read up on Lewis and Clark's expedition and the role that air guns played in charting the Northwest, they're doing themselves a really, real disservice.
Well, it would make a lot of sense for them to have an air rifle because they were going through hostile territory. Being able
I can tell you it makes a lot of sense right now because you can't find any ammo anywhere either.
Yeah, you're not kidding, right? Kidding. Interesting times. Everyone get their Hawaiian shirts on. It's the Boogaloo. But so let's talk about thermal scopes real quick. Have you tried putting one of your pulsar scopes onto an air rifle yet?
Yes.
And how does it work in the dark?
No, exceptionally well. I mean, thermal's not night vision, right? So thermal doesn't care what time of day it is. Thermal only cares whether or not there are temperature variances in your field of view or not. And if there are temperature variances out in your field of view, then it's represented on a display and you're going to see. So I see just as well in the daytime with a thermal rifle scope as they do at night. If I see a mile in the daytime through a thermal rifle scope, I can be out there in zero light, can't see my hand in front of my face, but I'll be able to see a mile, out across an open crop field. I'll see water towers, I'll see tree lines, I'll see everything. And if there's something out there with the temperature, like a pig, it just absolutely glows, right? So now, how do they handle recoil? They handle recoil just fine. I mean, these thermal rifle scopes are rated, recoil rated up to a 375 H&H. So, and they don't have the same type of reticle system as a traditional scope. So if you're talking about an air gun with a spring action and a traditional rifle scope, you may have an issue, right? Rifle scopes aren't necessarily fans of air rifles. They definitely don't like recoil going in two different directions.
Right.
But these are digital rifle scopes. So something like, the Pulsar thermal rifle scopes for the new Sightmark race, and Sightmark just came out with a 2X, which is perfect for air gun for air gun enthusiasts because you're shooting closer range and you're dealing with a base magnification of 2 power instead of 4 power, right? But even those scopes, like the Wraith, is full color HD during the daytime, 1080 HD, and then it's digital night vision. You just push a button and you're in digital night vision mode with a detection range of probably 200 yards, right? More than enough for hunting with an air rifle.
So,
but both of those, pretty much all these digital optics are going to run just fine out of off of an air rifle.
Especially if it's
even right? When you're talking about the PCP air rifles, most of today's rifle scopes will stand up to that because their actions are definitely not the same, and recoil impulse is definitely not the same as, say, spring actions and other types of air gun actions. Mm-hmm. So people who are running PCP air rifles, I mean, they should have a warm and fuzzy about running really any kind of rifle scope they want. Mm-hmm. But for night hunting, you can run lights, but thermal and digital night vision, that's where it's at. And I mean, when you look at something like the Wraith, you're talking about $500 digital night vision scope, and you're probably going to spend a couple few $100 on a scope anyway, right? So why not just go with something you can use 24 hours?
Yeah, if you're invested in chasing hogs at night, especially if you live in a hog heavy state.
Yeah, especially hog hunting.
Yeah,
you're predators, but
right. Well, that's one of the popular things to do for air rifles, especially. So have you noticed though, for someone, you know, I mean, I've shot your scopes at the range at Poma and some other events, but from a hunting perspective, is there any kind of learning curve that people got to go through when they first start working with a scope like yours?
Uh, the only real learning curve is, well, there's two sides of it, right? Understand the reticle that you're using, and understand the platform that you're using the scope on. So well, and there's a third part of that, understand the limitations of both, right? On air guns, it's more important to understand the limitations of your air rifle than it is to understand the limitations of the scope, because you're never going to reach the limitations of the scope with an air rifle, right? I mean, these are scopes that some of these scopes that run out to 2,000 yards on my bolt action rifles, right? And you're going to be shooting probably, you know, maybe up to 100 yards with an air rifle, right? So first, you want to be familiar with the reticle and how to use the reticle. Most cases, you really just need crosshairs if you're shooting closer range, but you really have to be cognizant of the drop, right? Your pellet or your bullets drop. So if you're shooting shooting a slower velocity air rifle, then you have to know what your drop is going to be at 25 and 50 and 75 and 100 yards, and apply that to whatever your reference is going to be in the reticle. You have to know those things before you get out there.
Sure.
The only other things you really have to worry about is, you know, make sure that when you're looking at optics, you're looking at air rifles, both have to be purpose driven, right? You have to decide what caliber air rifle you want to run, and that's going to be based on what you're going to hunt it with, right? So just like we talked about at the beginning of our discussion, if you're hunting hogs, I opt for larger caliber air rifles. I could do it with the 25 caliber, but I prefer the 357, the 45, and the 50 cals, right? And so you have to know that going in, and you also have to have an idea of what your range is going to be, right? Because you don't want to go out there with a 5 to 30 by 50 rifle scope when you know you're shooting 50 yards, right? You go with a 1 power, you might go with a 3X, 3 power rifle scope. You want to go with something that's going to give you some semblance of a field of view when you're shooting at closer range. So I would tell people, you know, don't just pull something out of your safe or off of a rifle and put it on your air rifle. Make a conscious decision, an optic buying decision that is purpose driven. You know, it's going to go on an air rifle. You know, this is going to be your average range, probably 50, 75 yards. So you know you want a lower base magnification for that rifle scope. You don't need a 50 millimeter objective lens. If you're going to hunt at night, is your help for night hunting going to come from that optic, or is it going to come from a mounted illuminator, right? Whether it's a red and green light or IR illuminator because you're running with a night vision device. I mean, all these things are tied into what type of optic you're going to buy and run on your air rifle. All of it's purpose driven. So step number one is figure out what you're going to use that air rifle system for.
So what do you guys how many scopes right now do you guys have in your lineup on the thermal and night vision side that people could choose from?
On the digital night vision side, on the Sightmark side, we have the Sightmark Wraith. We have the we just introduced the 2X. It's 2 to 18, and then of course we also have the 4X or the 4 to 32. Both of those are great. I mean, they're designed for 24-hour hunting. So we have those two scopes there. On the Pulsar side, we have digital night vision and we have thermal imaging. So on the digital night vision side, we have two lines of scopes that we offer right now, which is the Digisight Ultra and the DigX. And both of those are going to have detection ranges somewhere in the realm of 600 yards. So you're talking about Gen 3 level digital night vision performance if you're going to apply it to a traditional night vision rating, like Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. So it's on par with Gen 3. It's a very long detection range, more than probably most people are ever going to use. And the price points are, gosh, I'd have to look again, but I think somewhere between, say, $1,200, $1,600 or $1,200, $1,600. The Wraith is about $500 to $600, but the Digicite Ultra and the Digex run about, I think, 12 to 1600. Thermal, a little bit different story. Thermal's not night vision. Thermal's thermal. Technology is completely different. Instead of casting out IR and bring those light particles back in like night vision, digital night vision does, thermal sends sensors out to detect infrared radiation or heat and brings that information back and processes it into an image on your display, right? So a thermal can do that without any light at all.
Right.
Right? Of course, there's a cost associated with that. Right now, thermal rifle scopes on our lines, we have the Pulsar core that runs about $2,000, I think. You probably find them for about 1,900. That's a dedicated thermal rifle scope with a 384 core sensor and 17 micron pixel pitch.
Right.
And then we have, aside from the core, we have a core Ford adapter. That's on a 384 sensor. And I don't know what the price point is, probably 3,500 to 4,500 for the core Ford adapters. Use your rifle's reticle and magnification range. And literally that thermal imager attaches to the front of your traditional rifle scope, right? Most people are going to opt for dedicated rifle scopes, a little bit higher range, which is our trail and our thermions. And so the trails and thermions are separated into two groups, XQ groups and XP. So the XQs are going to run 384 sensors, and the XPs are going to run 640 sensors. The ones that everybody's after right now, especially for image clarity, high resolution imaging, that's a 640 sensor. And those are going to run the XP50 or XP38 and XP50s are generally going to run between, say, probably $4,500, $6,500 for a thermal rifle scope. And the XQs are probably going to run between, say, $3,000, $4,500 for the 384 sensors. So there's a little bit of a variance there. Now, 10 years ago, this stuff was like $20,000.
Right.
I mean, it was stupid expensive. When I was in the Marine Corps many, many, many moons ago, we knew we had thermal, but none of us had ever seen thermal. It was really kind of a unicorn. And so now thermal's pretty much everywhere. I mean, we've got contractors using them to troubleshoot, stuff in houses, insulation issues, electrical issues. First responders use them for search and recovery. Police are using them to catch bad guys that are trying to hide in the woods. So there are all these different applications. Thermal's all around us, and the price point has dropped significantly. Instead of $20,000 or $30,000, now you can get a thermal rifle scope for under $2,000.
Right.
I mean, I've got day scopes that cost more than that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I always love coming by your booth at SHOT Show every year, and hopefully we have it next year. Fingers crossed. You think we'll have the traditional show season next year?
I think that we'll have a traditional show season next year. I just don't know if it's going to start with SHOT Show. I'm hoping it does. I've got SHOT Show, and then right after that, we've got the NRA show in Harrisburg. And some big things are happening in Pennsylvania right now. They have just permitted the use of night vision and thermal for night hunting in Pennsylvania. But they haven't started that yet. They're waiting for some things to be defined by their DNR department. How and when and why, and that sort of stuff. But as far as state legislature, that stuff has passed. We have somebody that we do a lot of work with, Sherry Beatty. She lives in Pennsylvania, and she's one of the authors of this bill, and is probably the number one person responsible for getting this bill created and pushed through and passed. And so that's going to be huge for Pennsylvania, and that's something we've always fought when we do the Harrisburg show. We've got these guys coming to the booth by hundreds of thousands of people coming to the booth, and they can't buy our Pulsar products because they haven't been able to hunt with it. So I'm hoping that NRA Harrisburg will happen. And after that, I'm supposed to go to EWA. Now, last year, EWA was literally canceled the day before I flew this year. And so I was pretty disappointed about that. But as far as I know, I mean, it's set up for March next year. So I think we're going to have a regular show season through 2021. I just don't know when it's going to start.
When it's gonna start.
I'm not sure it's going to start with SHOT Show. I hope it does. I can't imagine what the industry is going to look like if we pass SHOT Show when you consider the amount of money that changes hands at that show.
Right. I'll tell you, there would have to be an exponentially larger number of phone calls made if SHOT Show doesn't happen.
That is the largest show. I mean, worldwide, that's the largest show in our industry. So,
yeah.
I don't know. But I can tell you, I mean, everything that we've had planned this year, everything we've had planned, all of my hunts that I've had planned, and the the NRA show in Nashville, the POMA conference, the Aglow conference, my round table with Brown Ells and Outdoor Sportsman group that I do, the round table we're going to have in Fairfax, Virginia. And everything has been canceled, and I just got news that the Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Riders Conference is now canceled until next year.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's part of being in business, right? Just bending with the times and going with the flow and trying to be as resourceful as possible. But glad to hear you guys are hanging tough. And
yeah, we have we've had a good year. I mean, product wise and sale wise, and we've done really, really well.
It's fantastic.
I think most people in the industry have done really well, especially on the shooting side. But man, it's so frustrating, man. I just can't even put it into words. I mean,
oh yeah,
I don't know. I've got a little bit of rage in me, man. And
You're the only
about
one.
the whole thing.
You're not the only one.
Hey, getting back to hog hunting, we talked about tips. There, one more I want to talk about real quick with game recovery.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that the technology that I use, thermal technology, is a total game changer for game recovery. Whether you're blood tracking, or most of the time, I don't have to blood track. I literally am looking 30, 40 yards of the woods, and there's a giant blob out there glowing.
Right.
And all I have to do is drag it out of the woods. I find it in seconds. But a lot of people don't have thermal, and that's one thing. But the point I want to make about blood tracking and hunting at night, right? Because killing something, seeing something and shooting it, that's one thing. And you've got equipment and gear that are designed to help you, be successful shooting things at nighttime. That's not necessarily a new thing, but the bigger challenge when somebody gets something on the ground is finding it in the dark, right? Even with bright white lights, sometimes, man, if you look at the color of a deer, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you shot a deer at last light, and now you're blood tracking it's in the dark, and you're looking for something that's brown and white in a landscape that's brown and white. Right. And so I'm a big I'm a big advocate for working smarter, not harder, and that's keeping track of your last blood, right? And so a lot of people will say, well, there's blood, there's blood, there's blood, there's blood. And if you're lucky, you're hunting with two people and you have somebody standing at last blood while you're looking ahead for the next blood, for blood again.
Right.
But a lot of times you don't have that. And so what I started doing is I take a little thumbnail lights, or sometimes just lighted knocks, but something that illuminates, or something I can see, whether it's reflective tape if I'm using a flashlight, and I mark last blood. So that's a big tip when you're hunting at nighttime, and I've done a lot, is that I will never blood track at nighttime without marking last blood. So if you're going out there and you're blood tracking at night, just make sure that you're marking last blood. Don't try to remember. Is that you find last blood and you walk 3 feet forward, and all of a sudden you look back and it looks different from a different perspective, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I can't find that last blood that was literally 3 steps behind me. I don't know where it is.
Right.
So mark your last blood with something that illuminates or reflects.
Yeah. Always, I carry just a piece of surveyor's tape in my bag, but I can understand that keeping the reflective tacks is probably a great idea too. let me ask you the one last round of questions here. We talked about this yesterday, and I think it's a big myth that I want you to dispel. And because you're from the great state of Texas, you guys are famous for barbecuing. So the myth is wild hogs taste terrible. Yesterday you were talking about breakfast sausage, and I now need to go. We need to set up an experience. We need to do this. We need to do a nighttime air gun hunting experience with your scopes. But talk to me about how hogs taste, how you prepare them, all the above, because it really sounds delicious.
I would say most of the time when somebody has a bad experience with hog meat, it starts with the way that it was handled when it was in the field.
Especially if it's hot.
Do what?
Especially if it's hot. Warm.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like anything. I mean, you deer hunt, and what's the first thing you do when you deer hunt? You want to get it dressed out, and you want to get it cooled down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what, man, I don't care if there's snow on the ground. The first thing you want to do is get it opened up.
Yeah.
And the same thing with hogs, especially more because, like you said, it's hot, and so I don't want to leave them laying any longer than I have to. I want to get them opened up. Especially where we hunt, sometimes it's 100 degrees. I may have to run out and grab a couple bags of ice and put them in the the body cavity,
right,
to cool them off. I'll skin them as fast as I can. I just want to get the meat cooled off, right? A lot of times, people, they may wait too long. You also have these glands that you find in the meat. It's hard for me to explain. Almost like these little pods, right? A lot of times people don't take that stuff out of the meat, and I don't know of a meat processor that will say one thing or another about them. And so my position is that they're just going to leave that stuff in there and grind it into your meat.
So wait, where do you find these glands? Are they in the hams, or where are the glands?
They're on the inside of the body cavity.
Okay. I'm sure it sounds like they're really easy to miss then.
Well, you can't miss them because when you look at them, you're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that nasty thing in there? Well, if you cut them open, you'll know. But anyway, so if you see anything that looks disgusting on the meat, cut it out, and that's all you have to do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't, and they don't, and so then you're left with the processors to take that stuff out or leave it in there. If somebody leaves it in there, or if you're processing your own meat, you leave that stuff in there, that stuff comes out really rank, right? You cook it up, it stinks, it doesn't taste good. It's got a really, really gamey kind of a bitter taste to it. And a lot of times it's either because it wasn't handled properly in the field or because, some glands have been left in there and been processed into the meat.
Right.
Especially, I think you might see that more with, say, burgerized meat. But because the back straps and, the shoulders, the tenderloins, I mean, those you should really never have any issue with, right? And I mean, that's just straight meat. But the other part of that is, you have to understand that, you're eating kind of whatever they've been eating, right? And so if you go eat a mule deer if you go eat a mule deer that's been eating sage, yeah, it tastes quite a bit different than a mule deer that's been eating alfalfa.
Right.
If you kill a pig that's been eating trash, it's going to taste different than a pig that's been eating off a corn pile.
Right.
And so there's some of that too. But my experience is that 99% of the time, if somebody's dealing with hog meat that doesn't taste good, then there's likely something that's happened from the time that it was taken from the field to the time that it was put to the time that it was put in butcher paper. Right. The only exception I've seen to that, because I've eaten meat from 300-pound boars, and I've never had any issue. I've never had an issue. I've killed pigs in the spring, in the winter, in the fall, in the summer. And people will say, I wouldn't eat any pigs in the summertime. Man, I've eaten a lot of pigs that I've killed in the summertime. I've never had an issue. Where I do have a little bit of an issue is on the boars, especially larger boars. The meat's a little tougher. And my own wife will tell me, if you're going to go hog hunting, can you kill a sow instead of a boar? And I'll say, yeah, I'll do that, unless the boar has really big cutters. But, but you know, my favorite pig to take, and that is because of the tenderness of the meat, right? So my favorite pigs to take for the freezer are going to be 100, preferably 150 to 200 pound sows. I like larger sows because the meat's still, I mean, it's really good, it's tender, and I get a lot of it. I mean, I get 35, 40, 50 pounds of meat out of one pig, and it's not going to be as tough as boar meat.
What's your favorite way to prepare it? Are you mostly sausage burger guy, all or just all of the above?
I mean, well, I used to process my own meat. My wife got tired of it because I have this I'm not a butcher. I was never trained, other than trained by other friends and family that were hunting, and so I've always had this knack for leaving too much sinew and stuff in meat. My wife said, "You're not allowed to do that anymore. You take it to a processor." So I do. So I'm starting out with meat that I'm getting back. I would say breakfast sausage is probably my favorite, which is going to blow people away because they're probably thinking back straps and everything else. And I do like back straps. I like the tenderloins. I like ham steaks. I like pork chops. And we grill those. And then, of course, my wife has this amazing way of cooking them in just a skillet. And she'll throw in some cream mushroom and garlic and onion and I don't know what else she does, but it tastes great. For me, I like breakfast sausage. I'll tell you what, you'll never have a better plate of spaghetti than you'll have with spaghetti that includes breakfast sausage. Literally take breakfast sausage out of the package and brown it and use that as the meat in your spaghetti, and it'll blow you away.
Huh. Breakfast sausage and spaghetti. That's a new one.
But honestly, if you're having bad pig, I mean, I'm not saying that bad pigs are out there. And most of the time, when you come up to a pig, I mean, you can smell. I mean, I've killed pigs, and I get up on them, and they're emaciated, and they're rank, and I know immediately there's something wrong with that pig.
Sure.
So I'm going to donate it to indigenous wildlife at that point, right? But because I know there's something wrong with it. But man, I mean, literally, I could probably count on one hand of all the pigs I've killed and then fed to my family where I thought it could taste better.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to how the meat is taken care of in the field and how it's prepared.
Right. Yeah, I gotta have those coolers on hand full of ice.
Nobody will ever convince me that you can't kill and eat a pig in the summertime. I don't care how devout they are. I don't care how opinionated they are on the subject. I mean, I've done this stuff for many, many moons and killed truckloads of pigs and eaten truckloads of pigs, and I've done it in all 4 seasons.
Well, we definitely need to develop one of these Legion experiences to go kill some pigs with you guys. It would be a lot of fun. I know I want to, even just as a way to start. I've never, outside of hunting squirrels and stuff with air rifles, from the big game perspective, I'm new to it. I think it'd be a great way to really learn and get comfortable shooting at big game or just larger game in general. The last question I'll ask you, what's your thoughts on Airgun Hunting Legion as the new brand in the industry that's coming on, even in a weird year like this? But what's your thoughts for this is a platform for the community?
My thoughts on hunting with air rifles?
No, Airgun Hunting Legion as a platform for the community.
Oh, I think it's great. I've been a voice that has been pro airgun and pro airgun hunting for a while now. I mean, for as long as you've been an outdoor writer yourself, right? And I've written about that. I mean, my name's been out there for millions of people to read my position on airgun hunting, right? And they were doing it 200 years ago, right? And so what's different? I mean, the technology is better, velocities are better, bullets are made better, the airgun performance is better, ballistics are better. So, I mean, I just can't understand why anybody wouldn't want to go out there and hunt, right? And so what I do like about what you're doing is I think that you're bringing a bigger, better voice than I ever did to air guns and airgun hunting. And I think it's relevant, and I think the timing is appropriate, right? I think that people need to know um, that air guns are phenomenal hunting tool.
Right.
And the great marksmanship tools. I mean, I can't think of at least at closer range anything that you can't do with an air rifle that you could do with a regular firearm, right? I mean, from target shooting to varmint hunting to big game hunting. I mean, I think that air rifles are appropriate for all of it. Now we're seeing these things launch arrows, right? So, you know, there's even a certain element of archery, you know, built into some of these platforms that I think is really cool. To me, it's kind of a nod to more primitive hunting. I appreciate it as a bow hunter. Um, you know, whether or not people should go out there with air rifles and shoot archery equipment like during archery season, that's like a different talk for a different day. But
Yeah.
But I like the diversity that I'm seeing in airgun manufacturing. I like that they're diversifying and they're reaching out to a lot of people. I hope that it continues, and I hope that I honestly hope that the platform that you're creating and reaching people on continues to flourish, because I think that it's an important conversation. I mean, honestly, with the articles I've written, I mean, I'm always a water off the duck's back kind of guy. I mean, I can take criticism from the best. You and I both know, as writers in the industry, like I get criticized more from people within our ranks than people who are out mainstream, right?
Yeah.
But man, like I do get tired of putting stuff out there about big bear air rifles and backing it up with ballistic numbers like momentum and kinetic energy. I mean, proving that this stuff works. And of course, there are more and more pictures coming that show that this stuff works. And you still got these guys out there that are just clamoring about how unacceptable it is to hunt with air rifles. Like you're running out there with a 17 caliber pellet rifle and shooting deer. I mean, it's not that.
Right.
Just in my state alone, I mean, just not too long ago, they legalized hunting deer with air rifles here in Texas. But that was just I think a couple years ago. I mean, until then, we were a holdout where we could hunt exotics, we could hunt pigs. I mean, you could go out there and hunt blackback antelope, and you could hunt feral pigs here with air rifles, but you couldn't hunt white-tailed deer. And I'll tell you, I mean, feral hogs are harder to kill than white-tailed deer.
Really?
Well, you think about what you're shooting. You're talking about shooting a very thick-skinned animal. A lot of times you're shooting a mature boar. You're also trying to get through a very heavy shield, you know, comprised of cartilage. I mean, you're trying to push through a lot. The hair itself on a feral pig is pretty solid. It's a hollow hair. I mean, literally, if you've ever skinned out a hog, I mean, just cutting through the hide and cutting through the hair, you might have to sharpen a knife at least once or twice while you're just skinning an animal out.
Right.
You don't have that problem with the white-tailed deer. It's a very thin-skinned animal.
Okay, I can see that. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I want to see you guys do great things, because this is something that not a lot of people talk about, and we need a larger platform. We need somebody like you to make waves talking about it.
Well, you know, we're really excited because, and we're going to actually have Mitch King, who's the president of the Airgun Sporting Association, on Friday, and I'm excited to talk to him. And when I chatted with him on the phone the other day, you know, he kind of summarized it best as like, if we can show that there's a groundswell of people that are advocating, and it doesn't matter whether it's airgun hunting or any other issue facing us as sportsmen, we had to show that there's a unified voice that is quantifiable for state agencies to be able to see. And having been on, you know, the side of the table where you are advocating for something, that's always what it comes down to when you're talking to the government, is how many people are actually in your tribe, you know? So I think that we're going to be able to create a very fun-loving environment, a passionate environment for people, being able to, you know, recording trophies and recognizing airgun harvests is something that, you know, people are clamoring for. Everyone that I've been talking to that's, you know, been in the community for any length of time says, you know, this community is ready for something like that. So we're excited to see where it goes. And certainly, you know, can't thank you enough for coming on to this video cast. And it's kind of interesting to start something up like this, but I think we're going to reach a lot of people, and like I said, would love to build something, build an experience with Pulsar to put some pigs on the ground.
Yeah, I think you're going to find a lot of people will align themselves with you in the industry, and I think, I mean, you already know. I mean, just remembering back to the numbers that we got from the NRA blog, you know, the article I wrote with, like I said, I mean, the top 10 after 5 months of being on the blog. I mean, you know, that just speaks to the interest, right? The people are out there and they're interested in the information. People want to know about airgun hunting. And I see that it's, I mean, it's grown by leaps and bounds, right? I mean, if there was an upward trend in something for the past several years, on the hunting side of things, as far as tools, I would say air rifles is definitely one of the major ones, right? So the interest is there, and you know, man, I'm not the only one that thinks like I do. You think like I do, and I would say 90% of the people who work in the industry are professionals in the hunting and shooting industry. They're going to think like you and I do. I mean, they want more of this. They want to learn more about it, and the consumers out there want to learn more about it. So I don't think you're going to have any trouble.
Right.
I think you just need to build it, right? They're going to come.
It's one step at a time. I love building businesses, and that's really what I do. Coming from how I grew up, and so being you know, having the blessed opportunity to have been asked to kind of head this up is it's fun. It's fun, and it's, you know, outdoor industry is my home. So can't wait to finally, you know, by the time this airs, we'll have revealed the project. So you're on the you're in the know, Kevin.
Hey, I just want you to remember that all of it started with one question.
Yeah.
Does anybody know of any outdoor rider competitions out there?
Yeah.
I mean, just that one question, right?
That's that one
I
question.
mean, you've built a career around this stuff.
I'm really blessed to have met good people like yourself and the folks at POMA. POMA stands for Professional Outdoor Media Association, and if you are a outdoor content creator, you need to come join us. Kevin's a past board member. I'm a current board member of the organization. And yeah, I mean, definitely getting in this industry is not easy, but it's about showing up and being reliable. And yeah, when I asked that question, I was in my dorm room, I think, playing on, I can't remember if it was Twitter, back when I used Twitter or something. And yeah, you said, hey, well, come with me. And it was funny. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but you know, you were the first person to encourage me. Like, no, you can ask for $50 for that blog, and it just snowballed from there. So, where can people find? Where do they go to find your brand, your brands, your social tags?
We're at. Well, 3 brands, I think, specifically for hog hunting and that work really well with air rifles are going to be, actually, I'll give you 4 brands, but sitemark.com, www.sitemark.com. That's for the day optics and the Wraith, digital night vision, all that. And then, of course, www.pulsarnv.com. And Pulsar is our primary thermal imaging and digital night vision brand. And then we have Kopfjager, that's Kopfjager. The website there is www.kjrests.com, and those are tripod mounted gun rests like the Reaper grip and the Reaper rail. We use those quite a bit out in the fields after pigs. And then Firefield, if you're just plinking with air rifles and want great optics, you go to www.fire-field.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on doing this. We'll certainly have you on again, and hope to be able to do some work with you guys soon.
Yeah, wait till I get that hammer.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to. I'm very curious to see what that does to a pig.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be cool. All right, buddy. I'll talk later. Thanks a bunch for everything, man.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Okay.